Matt James's journey as the Bachelor continues, and in week 2, we saw 3 dates and a whole lot of Queen Victoria. Hey guys, welcome back to another shared news from home. We are so excited to continue talking all things Matt James, but before we get into this week's recap, if you're new here, be sure to subscribe to our channel and ring the bell so you don't miss out on any future videos. As always, I'm your host, Fiona Zaring, and I'm joined by the wonderful Gabby Gonta.
Hi, Fiona. Let's talk all about it.
Oh my gosh, what a crazy episode. We had 3 dates. We had so much to talk about, relationship-wise, connection-wise, and of course, Victoria. Let's just dive right in with the first one-on-one of the season with Miss Bree. They rode ATVs, they had a little accident, some time rolling around in the mud, and they topped off the day drinking champagne in a hot tub. All in all, it was a very cute date. Matt's abs were on display. He gave us a sweet shout out message to Bree's mom that I thought was pretty cute. And then they actually ended up having a pretty serious conversation about Bree's relationship with her mother, how she had her very young, how she's since remarried and is sort of starting a new family and how that's affected Bree. And Matt, really relates to it based on his own relationship with his own mother. I'd say a connection was certainly made, and they sealed the date with a kiss, a rose, and lots of fireworks. So, Gabby, I want to know your thoughts. Feels like they had a lot of fun. The date went really well.
It went so well. This is like such an ideal date. I think Brie at the beginning was saying, I don't usually do crazy adventurous things like this, but she was such a good sport and had so much fun. I mean, they were riding such fun ATVs, and then the hot tub with the champagne. It was just a recipe for success, and they certainly had a connection that they got to grow on that day. It was really awesome of Brie also to just take the leap and start opening up. I know the girls are talking about in the house how little time they have, so I'm sure as soon as she got the one-on-one date, she was, especially the first one, she was just taking it and running with it and saying, this is my chance to really open up and get to know him and start building things super fast. So it was awesome that she got to share a little bit of her family story. It was really touching. I'm sure a lot of the viewers who have similar experiences can relate to her. And Matt is just such a gentleman. And I love when he asks the girls, how can I be a better bachelor for you? Or how can I make this experience better, us dating and things like that. So that was just a great way for us to get to know Matt a little bit better, as well as Brie. And they're hitting it off, the fireworks. It was all just a perfect moment. I think it was the ideal first one-on-one date for us. So very excited to see where their connection goes.
I totally agree with you. I think it was an amazing first date. And I think that something that it just keeps standing out to me as sort of funny in a charming way. Matt expressed some nerves about being vulnerable, and he is really, really great in those conversations. We saw it with Brie. We saw it throughout the rest of the night. He's a great listener. He's a great communicator. So thoroughly impressed with her and him for the first one-on-one of the season.
Me too, but meanwhile, back at the house, Queen Victoria is creating drama all day. She starts immediately lashing out over the fact that she's not on this one-on-one date and says that she just hates group dates and doesn't want to be on them or interact with the other girls at all. We also actually get to see a moment of her talking with the producers, a sort of behind the scenes moment, and just venting about the other girls and how they're getting on her nerves and just whatever, scenario she's deciding to vent in that moment.
Hate this girl power. I was like, I'm sick of you guys already. I want to be on that date. They're like, it's day one. I'm like, yeah, and I'm already sick of you guys.
But I thought this was interesting because she's certainly not making any friends this season. Usually villains or the people with a different opinion cling on to maybe one or two girls who will back them up a little bit. But Victoria has none of those at this point, and so she's already turning to the producers to just be there for her. So very interesting. I wonder if we'll get more moments like that in future episodes. What did you think about that moment, Fiona, and just how Victoria is kind of a different villain than we've ever seen on the show before?
I thought it was really, really interesting, and I think it's exactly how you just explained it. To understand her point of view, to understand the villains' grievances or what they're upset about, you typically cut to that shot with their confidant, with that person that they can turn to. And I didn't understand what she was upset about half the time. And the only option to kind of give us any side of her perspective was that rant with the producer. Nasty rant, by the way. I mean, she obviously was holding nothing back because there's no filter. She thinks she's behind the scenes, right? Like she's just talking to someone that she thinks is basically not even a part of the show. So I was a little surprised that they put that in, but I like it. We saw this start to happen in Claire and Tayshia's season, and I like these moments. I think they're fun. I think they feel a little edgier, like they feel very unscripted, very real. So I'm totally into it.
Me too. I think we'll certainly see more moments like this from Victoria, especially as she continues to stir drama in the house. Next up, the girls are starting to get nervous as well that she is just going to be creating drama out of nowhere and is going to be hard to deal with, which they should, since we know what lies ahead with Victoria in this episode. She then specifically calls out her roommate, Marilyn, and it seems like a total misunderstanding of a conversation.
Narrow out you, like you were rude to me earlier, like if you want to go there.
How was I rude to you?
Like you said, I want to pick your brain and understand you and see why you act the way you do. You said that.
But we know Victoria's going to blow it up into something that it isn't. During the fireworks between Matt and Bree for their date, she decides to confront the whole house.
Yeah, thank you for saying that because I think I'm like authentic and real. And so for you guys to like...
Don't say you guys. Sorry.
No, for each of
it's a two-way
I don't
street.
care. For like multiple people of you here to insult my character.
And ends up sleeping on the couch. So seems like a little bit of a pity on her moment. Like, look at me, I'm sad because of whatever reason. Like you're saying, sometimes it's hard to tell. But overall, this is shocking behavior. You know, she's really sticking out of the group and just not trying to make friends at all. So how do we think this is going to progress in the future? Is she ever going to listen to another opinion, or is it just going to get worse? What do you think?
I think it's just going to get worse and worse. I found everything she did at every step of the way to be very intentionally like volatile. She was always trying to incite some sort of argument, some sort of, hot take. She literally at one point in the night said something, and then someone said, well, it's normal to be jealous. And she was like, I'm not jealous. And then she literally, I think, described the definition of jealousy as an explanation of her feelings. So I think a lot of it is just like an intense need to stir the pot. And I think that for whatever reason, this is the strategy she took. We've seen girls march into the house before and be like, I'm not here to make friends. I'm here to find love. This is like taking it to a whole nother level. And I'm someone who's never understood the Bachelor friendships, how you can become best friends with a girl while also be trying to date the same guy. I've always been like, how is this happening? But like, this is a really, really interesting color from a contestant that I don't know that I'll ever get used to. But let's try to move on and talk about the first group date, because honestly, we have so much Victoria to talk about in this episode, including on this date. This was a huge group date. We had 18 girls on it, so very, very large. The first part of the date is what they were teasing last week. They had them all in wedding dresses to once again take wedding photos with someone they barely know, which for some reason struck me as very funny. The photo sessions, of course, like happened in front of everyone too, so they were not very like intimate or private. Here we go. Here she is again. Shocking. Victoria interrupts Mari's session to start declaring the royal wedding has arrived.
Okay, Piper.
The royal wedding.
What?
You forgot?
I didn't forget.
Oh,
Come
okay.
in.
With Matt, I definitely feel a connection.
She cuts the line. She has him remove her garter. And then, really goes in for like a makeout, strange setting, strange moves all around. Didn't rub the girls really the right way, I don't think. And then interestingly enough, not every girl even got to take a photo. That is how like crunched for time and how many numbers we are dealing with this season. Chris Harrison shows up and said it was time to fight for Matt's heart, which led us to a very, very chaotic game of capture the heart or, capture the flag, which I thought was an interesting, fun date. They sent them out into the wilderness and said, go be chaotic. The winning team, of course, gets extra time, which is their favorite thing to do. And the red team won. MJ was sort of the MVP of the red team. And then Mari got the MVB trophy sort of as like a consolation prize. I don't know, but she got to join the after party as well. So I'm just curious, thoughts on this challenge? Like, this is one of those dates where I'm like, nobody exchanged more than 4 words with him at all. This was pure spectacle. It was fun, but it was pure spectacle.
That's true. I didn't think about that. Looking back, these group dates, especially large ones like this, it's not really a date. I feel like it's the girls on like a Survivor competition show. And this is the only time they get with him all week. So it's like, give them a little bit more to work with, you know, besides just taking photos. And then the race or like the capture game, it was just all the girls like playing with each other. Matt wasn't even involved. So that's a really good point. I think that does make it like the stakes higher for winning the game, because then they actually get the time with Matt. But still, it's pretty brutal to be the other half of the girls that didn't get that time with him. Plus, with Victoria just going in for that kiss, he was like not having it. And it's always a better sign when like Matt leans in to kiss you, you know, multiple times, or you kind of play it cool and she's just all over him and it doesn't look like he's enjoying it. Let's talk about the evening portion of the group date where the winners did get that extra time with Matt. So right off the bat, Matt starts having some great conversations, talking about faith and family and really getting into it with these girls. I think they know that they have a short amount of time with him, so they're using as much of it as they can. New connections started to blossom that we haven't seen before. So Lauren was a big name for this night. He got some good time with her, got to know her a little bit more, and then he ended up giving her the group date rose at the end of this. So in between, though, Victoria showed up and tried to make a move on Matt. They were having a conversation and she felt like she was opening up to him. And, you know, it was a moment. They were talking about her insecurities and a couple things. They were getting into it, not quite as deep or not connecting as much as some of the other girls, but it happened. That's all I have to say about that. But she was certainly, you know, trying her best to get her time with him as well. There were so many girls and it was hard to get all the time with them, but Lauren was quite the standout. So I want to get your thoughts on Lauren and how far we think she's going to go.
Yeah, I think, you know, it was interesting. We didn't really see a lot of conversations from this date. I think we literally saw 3 and the clips were fairly short. Lauren kind of got the most time. And I think that that's sort of telling because I know that not everybody gets time ever on these dates, but I can't imagine that 3 people got time and the rest of them didn't. We didn't see that like classic montage of the girls who didn't get time complaining. I think that this could just mean that Lauren is one to watch, at least for the next few weeks, because out of all of the conversations that happened tonight, and clearly a jam-packed episode, they took the time to show us hers. So I was into their connection, and I'm pretty curious to see what happens next with them. We did have another one-on-one date this week, which I really, really loved. I think this was my favorite of them all, and this was Matt's date with Sarah. They initially took a flight and a tiny plane sort of around the resort, around the woods. They then went to a cute little picnic setup where they talk about family. And it's clear that they've like had fun in the plane. They're having a nice conversation, but I could tell she was holding back. I think Matt could tell she was holding back. It wasn't awkward or bad. It just wasn't like all there. And at dinner, Matt kind of just asks her to open up and sort of sets a really comforting environment. And she's able to really, really let her guard down. She talks about how her father was diagnosed with ALS and what that's looked like for her and for her family. She's one of the girls we actually kind of learned some of her story night 1. She quit her job as a TV reporter to move home and be a caretaker. And I don't think there was anyone out there who was not so moved by her story and the sacrifices she's made and what her family has been through. And Matt, of course, was, you know, so extremely touched by everything she had to say. He said he's honored that she's taking the time to be there with him. I don't think this is a surprise, but after all of that, he, of course, ended up giving her the rose. And I really feel like they made a different kind of connection, especially because she sort of had walls up at first and then they came down. A lot of the girls have been like, okay, I've got 5 minutes with him. I'm going to put everything out there right away. I don't know. I thought they had a really, really special night. I loved when he asked her, you know, like, how can I reassure you? How can I be there for you? I feel like maybe she's one to watch. She might be like one of my new front runners. What do you think, Gabby?
Yeah, me too, definitely. I think I was so like sad and touched by this moment. I was like tearing up because just everything she's been through, how strong of a woman she seems, and that Matt was just comforting her there, like you were saying. And it was just a beautiful moment between both of them. So I think their connection definitely grew on a deeper level, like you were saying. And especially because it was a little bit harder for her to open up. Like you were saying, the other girls, like it was great that he got to see a different side of them, but he didn't really have to break down a wall as much as he had to do with Sarah. So I think that is a telling for their future relationship, that if things come up and things get hard, like she was saying, it's not all, you know, fun bachelor dates all the time, a real relationship. So if things do get hard, like they're going to be able to get past those barriers and those things that are holding them back to just like get to the core of it, talk things out. And yeah, it was so touching. I think Matt was truly genuine. I think Sarah was genuine. He was saying, you know, I'm going to pray for your family. And she just seemed super touched. So I think the moment when he gave her the rose, that was just so reassuring. And I think she's going to go far for sure. And I certainly hope so. Next up is the cocktail party, and the girls who haven't gotten time all week are certainly nervous. It's coming down to the wire for them. So some key standouts tonight were Abigail and Matt. They came up with a cute little signal to talk to each other, you know, with their hands during group dates. It was a little like ear tug, jewelry fixing moment. I thought that was adorable of Abigail to do. And I'm going to be looking out for that for sure in the future episodes. Marilyn also opened up to Matt about feeling nervous because she didn't get any time with him and was really starting to get some feelings for him. But he surprised her with showing up with an orchid, which she mentioned was her favorite flower. So he really showed up and showed her that he cared and did a small gesture that made her see that. But for some reason, all of this sets Victoria off, of course, no surprise. I think because Marilyn was her roommate and things were going down between the two of them, things started to go awry. When it's Victoria's turn to get some time with Matt, she basically, of course, uses it to talk bad about Marilyn and the other girls rather than talk about herself and grow their connection. And she mentions that Marilyn is manipulative and toxic, which I don't think us or any of the other girls had ever seen before. So it's kind of coming out of left field, but she felt the need to bring it up to Matt. It seems like there's zero truth to it, and the other girls are attesting to that. But of course, Matt is concerned because he doesn't want any bullying or any, you know, harsh feelings or things going down in the house behind his back that just aren't positive. So he tries to address it. Matt tries to talk to Marilyn and get to the bottom of it. And it seems like Marilyn is a little bit shy, doesn't really know how to approach the situation or like defend herself. She just knows like what she did wasn't what Victoria was saying. So it was kind of just going to be a back and forth like that. But Marilyn does try to get to the source of it. So talking to Victoria and apologizing for the misunderstanding. She really wants them to find common ground, but Victoria is not having it. So Fiona, I want to know about what you think of this whole fiasco going down between these two girls. It seemed like everything was fine and nothing was wrong. And then here we have an issue that is going to cause, you know, problems during the rest of the cocktail party and the rose ceremony and probably beyond. So what are your thoughts on this going down?
This was so honestly bizarre to me. I knew Victoria was going to go to Matt at some point and say that, you know, whether it was Marilyn, somebody else, like this kind of moment was very inevitable to me. But the only drama we've seen between Marilyn and Victoria, the best I like could understand of it is she asked Victoria like, hey, I would love to like get to know you so I can kind of like understand where you're coming from, understand you as a person, like we're going to be sharing a room together, let's get to know each other. Or at least that's how she felt she asked the question. Victoria didn't feel it went that way. If all of that is what's led us here, that slight like exchange of how a few different words could be swapped out or intended, that is just too much for me. Even if it was 3 or 4 of conversations like that, I do not understand how we went from A to Z at all. And I really, really felt like Marilyn had no need to do what she did, which was sit down, try to be the peacemaker. She tried to stay so calm. She, was like, I understand how you're feeling. And because you're feeling this way, I'd like to apologize to you. That being said, like, we've got to find a way to make it to common ground because I did not intend for you to feel this way. And she was just so hostile to her. I mean, she said, first of all, at one point she said that they were oil and vinegar, which made me laugh because I think she meant oil and water, which regardless, she just, I don't think has a point or has an argument. She just wants to be angry is kind of what I got. I mean, is that what you thought? I just felt like she was trying to be angry the whole time.
I totally agree. You put it perfectly. She just seemed like she wanted to be mad the entire time for no reason. And if you can't just sit down with someone that you're having an issue with and try to resolve it, she was saying she literally didn't want to. She was saying, I have no intention to like resolve this with you. And it's like, well, then like there's really nothing you can do. Like nothing's going to get better and you're just going to have fights and feuds with every single one of these girls if you don't like try to look inward and see maybe, you're the one who's causing a little bit of this. I think it's just like very selfish and not introspective to want to clear the air on this situation. So I think if she continues acting like this, which it seems like she's going to, that things are only going to get worse.
Totally. I mean, I feel like throughout this entire episode, there were moments where she would say things where I was like, okay, sometimes I say that when I'm watching the show, but I'm not on this show. Like when she said something in the beginning about like anyone who's pretending to be like happy that Bree's on that date and you're not, like you're fake. Of course they'd rather be on the date, but like if you can't find it in yourself to like try to be happy for somebody else or like try to be supportive of somebody else, like yes, of course you would rather be on that date. These are just like human connection, like social skills, right? Like you don't act nasty and negative without checking yourself ever because logically you would rather be on that date. Like that's just not like social skills to me. So I don't know. Perhaps it comes down to like she really just doesn't care and she's really not here to make friends. But I think that hopefully watching this back, she realizes that like there's a reason that people try to make friends on these shows. Like there's a reason you don't pick a fight with every single girl you speak to because it's just not sustainable. Oh my goodness, I could talk about her all night, but let's talk about that rose ceremony because this was one of the craziest rose ceremonies I've ever seen. We did see some of our front runners getting roses. A decent amount of the girls that got roses, I felt like was pretty expected. I'm glad to see them coming back. But before we even got to like the stressful part of the ceremony, and there's only a few roses left and we don't know what's coming next week. Poor Sarah felt really ill. She felt, faint. She ended up leaving the room. They had her sit down and you hear a producer say like, she's going to faint. You need to get a medic. Matt very sweetly came to check on her. But that's where we left off. I mean, obviously, I'm sure she's okay. I'm sure they took great care of her. And we see her in the promo for next week. So obviously, whatever's going on here ends up being worked out. But it was a kind of chilling moment. I feel like I've never seen anything like that. What were your thoughts when all of this played out? It was a bit shocking.
Yeah, it was crazy. It seems like it kind of came out of nowhere. I mean, I don't know what was the cause of it besides maybe just exhaustion and she'd been standing all day or, hadn't eaten or was freezing. I feel like those are all, plausible components that would have gone into that cocktail party night. Or maybe she's just someone who's really susceptible to being lightheaded and feeling faint. And so putting, under pressure and just the heat of the night could have made that happen to her. I feel like I'm surprised this doesn't happen more often, actually, considering like how much these girls are going through during this filming process. So certainly hope she's okay. And I'm, curious to see what all caused this, what she has to say about it afterwards, and, how it affects the rest of the night, the rose ceremony and the next episode.
Totally. The biggest question I have leading into next week is, did we finish the ceremony? Like she already has a rose. So it's not out of the question that they could pause, obviously make sure she's okay, make sure she's taken care of, and then return to the ceremony because we already knew she was safe? Or do we cancel the rose ceremony and push that off even further? I'm very, very curious to see who will still be in play for like how much of next week's episode. Just when I thought we were back on like a regular schedule, we're still mixing it up with these rose ceremonies.
Yes.
All right, you guys. Well, that was truly a shocking episode. Obviously, next week is going to be so intense. The drama is going to continue. We saw more Victoria teased in that promo. We are going to be breaking down that entire promo, looking for clues as to what we can expect, maybe where the drama is headed, who's sticking around. So if you're interested in breaking that down with us, make sure you head to the description. There is a link in there to that video. But in the meantime, you guys, we want to know what you thought about tonight's episode. So be sure to let us know down in the comments. And if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to our channel and ring the bell because we will be covering all things Matt James all season long. As always, I'm your host, Fiona Zaring. I was joined by the incredible Gabby Gonta. If you want to come say hi on socials, our handles are on the screen right now. Thank you all so much for watching, and we'll see you next time. Bye.